What's up, everyone? Welcome back to C&D Sports. Today we've got our first regular season edition of NHL Power Rankings. We did preseason Power Rankings. Make sure to go check out that video. But this is our first installment of Power Rankings now that the season is underway.
Yes, and we'll make it clear that these are my rankings, I don't think anybody's going to come to a consensus here when it comes to some of the teams that are lower, some of the teams that are higher. This is pretty much performance-based and based off the way teams are playing, so it's relative to the standings and, again, current team play. Without further ado, let's get into it. At 32, Arizona remains at the bottom. They're winless, not a whole lot of hope there. Everybody there seems ready to tank outside of guys like Jacob Chikrin and maybe Nick Schmaltz, but not a lot of hope in Arizona, not a lot to look forward to this season at least. At 31, I have Seattle, and this is a team that's probably lower than they should be, but for me, they're simply not winning games, and I think they've shown signs that they can move up, and they likely will. But for now, I can't have that because the performance on the ice just isn't there yet. Then at 30, we have Chicago, and it's just not been a good week for the franchise as a whole, and it's taken a toll on the players. Now, coming out of it, I think they've been able to separate it as it's still ongoing, whereas the on-ice product, I think, will be representative more of the players and who's there now. And Marc-Andre Fleury's looking good. Things are clicking. I think they're beginning to beat the teams they're supposed to. I'm not sure what to look forward to in this team, as again they built this offseason, and when you bring in guys like Seth Jones, you give him that contract, then you bring in Fleury, you're obviously pushing for a deep playoff run. So you would expect them to be better, and I think it should only go up for now, but again, you never know. And that's the same case with Montreal, who I have at 29. And they have a lot of hope in Carey Price coming back. That will be in the next couple weeks. But even now, they're showing signs of stability. They're over their cup run hangover. Of course, they had some losses in Price for the beginning of the season, and it looks like Shea Weber's career has come to an end. And I think now they've gotten over that, and they're beginning to push forward. Above them at 28, I have the LA Kings. And for the Kings, it was supposed to be a season for improvement with the young guys and the vets mixing. But with Drew Doughty going down, I don't see that happening yet. I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs before, and I definitely don't think they're going to now. I think it's another season where they'll develop. So at 27, I have Ottawa, and another team that's just losing games. I expect a little more out of them for considering how hardworking they are. And the talent is catching up. It just hasn't caught up yet.
Right.
They have 3 goalies. You have Matt Murray, who's underperformed, Anton Forsberg, who's underperformed. In my opinion, Philip Gustafsson's been their only stable goaltender, and that's not ideal. So until they figure that out, I don't see them rising up this list.
Right.
But then at 26, we have Dallas, who's another team who they're just not winning games, and I don't know if they'll ever get to that point, because what they are is what they are. They're an injury-prone team. A lot of their players go down year after year, and they've never been stellar offensively. They've always had defense. They've had stable goaltending, but I think the lack of offense and the injuries are catching up to them. Right now, the only player that's impressed me so far is Braden Holtby, which isn't the greatest of things, as he's been a solid starter, but you want more around him and more out of Dallas for them to be pushing into the playoffs. 25, I have Vancouver, and it's been up and down so far. They had a really poor home stretch where they got that win against New York, and that was great, and I think that's something for them to build off of, but I'm not sure how far you can push a team like Vancouver that tends to disappoint.
Right.
So for now, we'll keep them at 25. 24, and this is a team that's really low right now, and that's Vegas, and this is about as low as I expect them to be. I expect them to only rise, And that's a matter of Stone coming back in the next few weeks, you would expect. Pacioretty soon. William Karlsson's out. You want him back, and Zach Whitecloud's out. Among other depth pieces, I think that's what it comes down to. Now, the issue is, and these are teams we're obviously going to have higher, Calgary and Edmonton have been phenomenal.
Right.
So we said at the beginning of the season, there's one spot opened, and that it was supposed to be Vegas and Edmonton's division. Now it's Calgary and Edmonton. So that third spot looks like it can go to a team like Anaheim and San Jose, who are written off, and even Vancouver if they go on a run. So Vegas really needs to catch up here. They need their depth to perform. And if there's any hope of getting Eichel, now is the time to do it, because they need to bolster their roster. You can never use injuries as an excuse, because, that's to be expected in any franchise.
Right.
Above Vegas, Anaheim, who's off to a great start. Of course, it's up and down, as John Gibson generally doesn't have the support he needs or deserves, but it's John Gibson. He's doing Gibson things, and he's keeping them in the mix.
Exactly.
Their offense has stepped up in comparison to last year. Defense has always been all right. It's been solid. I don't know what to look towards, because, again, they're going to ride Gibson into the ground, and when they do, you expect a drop-off. So that's where I don't have much hope for Anaheim, but we'll see. Now, Detroit's playing solid hockey, and they're building off of what they did last year. They're one of the best in terms of bad teams defensively, and they're continuing to develop there. You have guys like Raymond stepping up and scoring some goals. Another team like Anaheim, where they needed offense. Goaltending and Thomas Greiss and Ned. You expect a little more out of Ned, so there's some hope for them to build forward. Thomas Greiss has been phenomenal. Now, of course, you're going to miss some games with Bertuzzi because he's not unvaccinated. But Dylan Larkin's been a stud for them.
And when Bertuzzi's been in, Bertuzzi's been fantastic this year.
He's a guy that could, if he played all 82 games, he could compete for the Rocket Richard so far. But that obviously won't happen. And again, Detroit's another team. I'm excited to see how things play out for them, as they are one of the more stable teams in the NHL. And I don't see any areas where that sets them back, unless it becomes a little overwhelming for the rookies and injuries, of course.
Right.
Another team who, again, despite injuries, they still make it work, the Pittsburgh Penguins. And they're in the division of death in the Metro, and they've still exceeded expectations. Crosby's been out. He's out again due to COVID, so he got a little bit of action, but not much. So now Pittsburgh has to look forward to Letang coming back, Malkin coming back, and hopefully a more healthy season. And that's really the only way they can rise. I can see them staying around here if injuries continue throughout this season, giving them not much to build off of and not much support. But if at some point they do get healthy at the right time, they can make a run. So you never know with Pittsburgh. That's a team. You never want to bet against Crosby, but at the same time, they're all only human and injuries happen. So Toronto, with a very disappointing start to the season after coming off a disappointing playoffs.
Again.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of this team outside of, I think they're headed in the right direction. And you see now there's a lot of skill on that team. Of course, you have Tavares, Nylander, and Matthews, who is probably their best player. But it seems like Mitch Marner is the engine that runs that team. And with him hopefully snapping out of that slump, putting up some goals, some points, I think things should look forward, or things should be looking brighter in Toronto.
Right.
And if that's the case, then yes, they're a team that should go up this list. But you never know. That's why I have them lower, just based off of performance till now. But I expect them to rise alongside teams like Vegas. Columbus at 19 has stolen some games. Elvis has stolen some games. Patrick Laine is looking like he enjoys playing hockey again. And I think that bodes well for Columbus and future success. I just don't think this season is it for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're building and developing in the right direction with their young core. I can see a drop-off, though, as teams like Toronto and, again, Vegas, even Pittsburgh, as they rise.
That top lines look good with Jenner, Voracek, and Line. So
Yeah. And Voracek has something to prove, so
exactly.
he's going to be putting up some points. And Jenner, given the opportunity, I think he will take on that role Nick Foligno had and grow into one of the better two-way forwards in the NHL. Then at 18, we have Nashville. Nashville, you can never count out something about that franchise. I don't know what it is. I mean, you've had Barry Trotz's reasons for them making the playoffs, then them being underdogs, Pecorine running the show. Now it's just, you can never count out Nashville. No. Roman Josi stepped up. Their forward group, though disappointing considering the contracts, they've stepped up. UC Saros is one of the better goalies in the NHL. And it's showing with their performance on ice. Now, I don't know if it's sustainable for them as, again, teams, especially in the Central, get better, get more settled in. They've definitely capitalized on teams like Colorado coming off of slow starts. So that's where I can see Nashville dropping off, but it's no guarantee because you can't count them out.
Right.
At 17, I have New Jersey, and New Jersey has done pretty well without Blackwood. The only thing I don't like about them right now is PK Subban. He's been looking extra dirty. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe he's slowing down and doing the best he can to keep up, but he's likely to get a suspension after a bunch of hearings and fines so far. Outside of that, New Jersey's been great to watch. Their young core is finally where we've expected them. Right, they've been disappointing so far. The addition of Hamilton has been great, and again, Mackenzie Blackwood has been injured. So with him coming back, running that tandem of Bernier and Blackwood, this team can push into the playoff picture in the toughest division in the NHL.
Right.
16, we have Buffalo, and they were off to a ridiculous start. And how sustainable is that? I don't think it's very sustainable. I think they just capitalized on teams that were down, and now those teams are coming back and winning those games. So I expect Buffalo to fall off, maybe all the way down to 30, as we had them projected when going into this season. But good for them to have something going, and it's no guarantee. Maybe somehow they do keep it up, and if they trade Eichel and they get NHL assets, you never know.
But this is something that Sabres fans have seen in years past, where they get off to a good start. They're near the top of their division at the almost third, even halfway through. And then the second half or the last 2/3 of the season come along and they just kind of turn into what we expect of the Buffalo Sabres. So
I don't think that's a bad thing. I wanted them to be bad this season because they've got to rebuild yet again. And I think get some star power, especially if they lose Jack Eichel. So you never know. I have no idea what's going on in Buffalo. It's just been fun to watch, for now at least.
Right.
San Jose is another team who's been phenomenal. Erik Karlsson may not be that $11 million, that Norris trophy-winning Erik Karlsson, but he's been a great defender, putting up points and helping the team around him.
He looks like he's worth that contract to some degree, considering how bad he has been in the past few seasons.
Yeah, and another guy is Timo Meier, who's really stepped up. And you have the vets after everybody who's counted them out. They lose Evander Kane, of course. They've stepped up as a whole, and I think that bodes well for them. As a team that should contend. A couple years ago, we felt that they were contenders. It's just that things didn't work for them. And now, for the first time, I will mention, since Martin Jones was a starter, because they had him, but he just kind of fell off. Since then, I think Aiden Hill and James Reimer have been their best tandem. Where you have Aiden Hill, who was third string in Arizona, and I don't think that was the best spot to have him because he was a great NHL goalie. James Reimer has been phenomenal in runs, and I think this is another one of those runs. Of course, we expect San Jose to drop off. Neither of us had him in the playoff picture. We didn't even give them a shot. So I would expect them to fall, but you never know because they have the players who've performed in the past on this roster. Will they do it again? So far they have. At 14, we have Boston, and that top line has taken steps backwards, and that hurts them. The only player I'm enjoying right now on Boston, or the only player not disappointing me, is Charlie McAvoy. Pasternak's not putting up those God mode goals. Brad Marchand hasn't been as pesky. He hasn't been the top 10 player we expect him to be. And Bergeron, it isn't looking like Bergeron. Age has caught up to him, and I think they're missing Krejci and Rask. Those are two huge losses, and we mentioned going into this season it's going to hurt, and it has. I thought they replaced them in the offseason, but although players and production can come in and do their thing, you can't replace character and what those guys meant to the organization. And obviously it's been hurting them so far. At 13, we have Colorado, and again, this is just another slow start. I think they've snapped out of it, so I'd expect them to rise. At 12, we have the Islanders, and that's Barry Trotz reasons. You can never count them out, and they're playing Islanders hockey. At some point, you expect them to fall off, but it hasn't been there yet. In that tough Metro, it's not a guarantee that they make the playoffs, but they should.
They've been here before, where they've been at the bottom of their division, and then they find a way to claw back into the playoffs. And once they get in there, Barry Trotz
does Barry Trotz thing.
Exactly.
Takes them to the conference finals somehow. At 11, we have Tampa Bay. Another playoff hangover, which we've seen in a bunch of teams. They've been the most affected, obviously, but another team that I think snapped out of it, and I expect them only to rise from here on out. The only thing I'm worried about is Vasilevsky. They don't have a backup. So alongside Connor Hellebuck, I think he's a guy who maybe not realistically, but he may be a guy that needs to start 70 games for their team success, especially now that they've lost that depth. Now we get into the top 10 with Minnesota, and Minnesota's been hot to start. You have Kaprizov, you have Eriksson Ek, Fiala, a bunch of young guys stepping up, one of the more underrated decors, and Cam Talbot has been one of the more stable netminders in the NHL to date. So I think all that clicking and teams like Colorado, Chicago off to slow starts, Minnesota has capitalized, even teams like Winnipeg. So we'll see where Minnesota ends up. Right now they're playing well, so they've been rewarded with that 10 spot. But another team you would expect to drop off because the Central should be a lot stronger than what they've shown so far.
They'll drop off to some degree. How far is still unknown.
Yeah. Then at 9, we have Winnipeg. So Winnipeg, it's been tough. Like Kyle Connor right now is a top 5 player in the NHL. Outside of that, Winnipeg's been disappointing for me overall. Now, Connor Hellebuck, congratulations. He just had a child. Hopefully when he comes back, you would expect him to be Connor Hellebuck. With them missing him, they've still been stable despite all these things. They've still been in the mix. So when things start clicking, I think Winnipeg will be that top tier team we expect them to be, considering the moves they made in the offseason. It's just, for me, a matter of when. I have to hold them back, though, because their performance hasn't been as dominant. But 9 isn't a bad spot for a team underperforming.
Exactly.
At 8, we have Philadelphia, and Carter Hart has looked to be the Carter Hart we expected him to be. Of course, there's still more room for him to improve. He's a young goalie, so we expect that from him. Defense has been pretty solid. They are missing Ryan Ellis, and they're still playing well without him. Provorov showing that he is a number 1 defenseman. Cam Atkinson has been a great addition for them as he has performed so far. And even if he doesn't, you have guys like Sean Couturier. He's stealing some points from JVR, who's on my fantasy team. I don't like that. Anyways, I think Philadelphia has a lot of hope. I think this is a year they're going to make the playoffs despite Martin Jones being their backup. That's the only thing I can knock them for. Outside of that, I love the team they put on the ice.
But Martin Jones has been performing as a backup so far. So
I mean, that's where he needs to be.
Yeah.
So at 7, I have the New York Rangers for Igor Shesterkin reasons. He has been the second best goalie in the NHL so far, and you should expect some fall off, but they haven't had to go to Georgiev yet, who should be a starter in the NHL.
He wants to be a starter,
and he
too.
wants to be a starter in the NHL. So when they start giving him more starts, you expect one of the better tandems in the NHL there. On top of that, you have Adam Fox and a nasty D-core.
A newly locked up Adam Fox.
Yes. And then you have Panarin and Zibanejad, and they're looking like Panarin and Zibanejad, but they still have more they can show. So New York, believe it or not, is a team I think can rise. Now, of course, they can fall because they are young, but then you still have Lafreniere and Kakko, who you would expect to improve, even if not. They don't need them to right now, at least. And if they do, that's just a bonus for this team looking like they could do some damage. So at 6, I have Calgary. And for me, so far, they've overperformed. As their team, I generally write off as being dysfunctional. Goudreau, Kachuk, and Lindholm have pulled up. They've been phenomenal. Mangiapane has been one of their most valuable players. The D-core, who I thought would have hurt, hasn't so far without Giordano. They've pulled up. Goaltending, you can always expect Markstrom to pull up. Dan Vladar's been stable as a backup. So Calgary's doing what they're doing, and they still have Monahan, who's a bottom 6 forward for them right now. So whether he pulls up or they trade him out, I think Calgary may even improve from where they are right now. Will they? I'm not sure. As their team, again, I don't generally have faith in, but they've given me no reason not to, as Alberta's looking like the best province for hockey right now.
And we didn't even mention that they're still one of the finalists for Jack Eichel right now, who, again, Jack Eichel will only help this team. Obviously, he still needs to get his surgery, but if he goes there, it could be the move that needs to be made for Calgary to really be up there with Edmonton and you assume Vegas towards the end of the year, and really be the cup contender that a lot of people have expected them to get to one day, and they just haven't yet.
Yep, and let's say Monahan's in that trade. That's currently not a loss for them.
Nope.
So it should only be a brighter future for Calgary off of a hot start they're having so far. But now we get into the top 5. Let's kick it off with Washington. Washington is nasty. Ovechkin has shown no signs of aging. I would argue he's been better this season than in seasons past, as he's scoring a goal a game. He's scoring over a goal a game, and will he do that for the rest of the season? I'm not sure, but I'm not going to bet against him.
I mean,
but yeah, no,
I'm not going to bet on 82.
Not 82, but
if you wanted to bet on 60, I wouldn't say that's unreasonable.
It's very realistic. Scoring's up though, so that's where you can make an argument that maybe he does something ridiculous at the age of 36.
It's possible.
And then, of course, they still have their depth. Kuznetsov is looking solid again. You want a little more, but he's been there. They haven't missed Backstrom when he's been out. So I would assume Washington's a team you can expect much out of. I'm just not sure how much, because you would expect them to age at some point. It's got to happen, right?
And obviously they have to bank on Tom Wilson not being Tom Wilson. Obviously there was a little slip up against Tampa Bay with some questionable decision-making in terms of physicality towards Eric Chernak. So we're beginning of the season. We're already talking about Tom Wilson. He is a guy that, love or hate him, he's a guy that really helps that Ovechkin line and has helped that Ovechkin line this year. So he's a guy that is a lot more valuable in than out of the lineup. So
yeah,
Tom Wilson's temperament is a huge X factor for this team.
Yep, but for the regular season, at least, they won't drop off too much without him.
No.
But like you said, it's obviously a good thing to have him. Now, at 4, St. Louis, to me, this hasn't been a surprise. I had high expectations of them going into this season. I think Jordan Binnington's one of the better goalies in the NHL. Backups could be a little stronger, but their D-core's solid, their forward group's solid. I don't see any major flaws. And Tarasenko's looking the best version we've seen in a while of Tarasenko. So you have that mixed in with their depth. I think they're poised for a good season and a deep playoff run, and I don't see them falling too far. But yeah, I think 4 is a good spot to have them now, and they'll be flirting with this spot throughout the season. Now we get into our top 3, and these teams have truly been top tier in the NHL, tough to beat, high octane offenses, and just unstoppable overall. We kick it off with Edmonton. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are the 2 best players in the NHL right now, and there's really no doubt of that, as you cannot stop them. Then you have guys like Puljujarvi stepping up. Nuge is always going to be a threat. Yamamoto's been slow, but he seems to have the monkey off his back. Edmonton's a team that can push higher. I don't know if they will, but then Koskinen's filled in for Mike Smith. He's filled in well. So if you can run that tandem, you extend Smith's career and you keep him fresh for the playoffs. Maybe you put in Koskinen for some playoff games because he has been great for them so far. Defense without Larson is better than I thought it would be. So I don't see any major flaws in this team outside of what do you do if McDavid and Draisaitl don't work, but because they're the 2 best players in the NHL, that shouldn't be a worry for an extended period.
Right.
And then at 2, the Florida Panthers. I originally wanted to have them 1 going into this season. They haven't disappointed me at all. Reinhardt is nasty. Ekblad's nasty. Bobrovsky is a Vezina goalie right now. Will he keep it up? I don't see why not, because it is Sergei Bobrovsky. Despite the disappointing seasons, I think he's snapped back into that elite goalie we expect him to be. If that's the case, Florida can do a lot of damage now and in the playoffs, as I do have them as a team that should be competing for a cup. And then number 1, it's Carolina, the best team in the NHL. Frederik Andersen is currently the front runner for the Vezina, in my opinion. Sorry, Toronto, but this is what goalies look like when they have defense, real defense, and that's what Carolina offers. And then they have a nasty and deep forward core. Aho's pulled up, Svechnikov's pulled up, Teravainen's always going to pull up.
Kotkaniemi's been solid.
Kotkaniemi's been solid. Natchez is a guy you can expect some more out of. I don't see any area where Carolina drops off here. Of course, it's possible, but this team to me so far has been flawless, and I can pick at the roster all day. I don't see any flaws.
So with that, that'll do it for our first regular season installment of our NHL Power Rankings. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, give it a like down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any of our other uploads. We're going to have one of these Power Rankings monthly. So again, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss when those come out. And comment down below what your thoughts on our Power Rankings are, what your Power Rankings are as well. Let us know what you think in the comments below. With that, we'll see you in the next video. Peace.